We're going to go ahead and get started here in just a moment. We still do have people joining the meeting, so thank you for your patience. We had about 60 people register for the meeting this evening. We have 26 here so far, but we want to respect your time. My name is Kristen Dar, and I'll be facilitating this meeting this evening. The first thing I'd like to do is point out to you the website for our project, which is at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, www.azmag.gov or gov, excuse me, /SVMTPS. This meeting will be posted at that website, and there's also additional information on that website for you to review. I'd like to also point out that we are going to provide you a presentation about the project, and we would like for you to know that you can enter your questions in the Q&A dialog box, question and answer, which should show up at the bottom of your screen. It says Q&A and has a couple of little thought bubbles there. And we will be answering the questions in that dialog box after the presentation. So enter your question at any time, and then we'll answer those questions at the end. At this time, I'd like to introduce Hannah Quincy with the Maricopa Association of Governments. She is our project manager for the study, and she's going to start us off. Hannah?
Thank you, Kristen. Well, good evening, and it is my pleasure today to offer you, members of the public, an introduction to the Superstition Vistas Multimodal Transportation Planning Study. We're here tonight to hear your input about issues and concerns and goals related to transportation in and around this study area for our project team to consider throughout this project study effort. This is the first of 3 community meetings that will occur throughout the study. So we welcome you and we thank you for joining us tonight and making the time. Before we get started, I just want to start by introducing some key members of our study team who are presenting and facilitating the meeting tonight. My name is Hannah Quincy. I'm a transportation planner with the Maricopa Association of Governments. That's the regional planning agency, encompassing Maricopa County and northern portion of Pinal County. And I am the project manager for this study. I'm joined tonight by Kevin Kugler and Brian Snyder from Michael Baker and Kristen Dar from Central Creative, who you met earlier. They're joining from the consultant team and they are supporting our project. Kevin is serving as the consultant project manager for this study. Brian is a transportation planner supporting the study. And Kristen Dar is our project team member focused on community involvement for the study. So I'll touch on our agenda and kind of what we're going to be covering in tonight's meeting. I want to start out just with a note about housekeeping. So during the meeting, we're going to be conducting a live Q&A. The goal is to really get your input on a few thought-provoking questions throughout the presentation and a Q&A session at the end. So we really welcome your input and feedback on these questions. These questions that we'll ask also mirror the survey that we've prepared. Exact same questions. That survey is posted on the project website. And that will be live from today through June 15th. So if you know anyone who couldn't join tonight who really wanted to provide input on this study at this time, please help us share this survey, let them know about that live survey on our project website. We'll add the link to the project website in the chat. And it's, it's listed on all the slides here. You can see www.azmag.gov /SVMTPS. We are also going to be going over the study objectives and really touch on what is the study area and what's the process of our study. We'll go over an existing conditions assessment, touching on the community profile and the transportation systems. We've prepared supplemental materials for you that cover this information for you to review and follow along throughout today's presentation. There's a total of 8 boards in the supplemental materials that you can download on our project website. So if you go to that project website that I just mentioned, under materials, you can download the PDF of those boards. And again, we'll put that link to the project website in the chat. Additionally, we're going to have time for a live Q&A. So as you're asking questions and putting those in the Q&A, we will be answering them at the end. And so if there's any burning questions that you have or any other sort of input that you want to give that wasn't touched on throughout the presentation, please put that information in the chat, and we'll touch on that and answer your questions and closer to the end. And then finally, we're going to close out the meeting tonight with a conclusion and an overview of next steps in the study process. So with that, I will turn it over to Kevin Kugler, and he's going to present an overview and the objectives of the study.
Thank you, Hannah, and good evening, everybody. Next slide, please, Brian. And as Hannah said, we're going to get into the objective of the study and provide you an overview of the study area. As the slide before you suggests, the objective of the study by MAG and in partnership with its member agencies is going to be to develop a coordinated vision for a multimodal transportation network that enhances the mobility and accessibility of people and goods to and within the study area for the near term, which we're defining as the year 2030 for purposes of this study, and the long range, which is the horizon year of the year 2050 for the study. The transportation network and service alternatives and recommendations that we'll ultimately be providing will build on the following items. Certainly, the existing needs that we're in part defining with your input and assistance tonight, by the way. Also, anticipated growth and development, of course, in the study area. Any planned roadway extensions in the study area. Existing and planned energy and water infrastructure systems, which are important to be cognizant of in a transportation plan such as this. Certainly, we're going to be looking upon land use plans for each of the cities that are in our study area in Pinal County. More on that in a little bit. Travel demand modeling, which is, if you're not familiar with that concept, it's basically a fancy computerized model that does forecasting for future traffic trip generation in the study area. Helps us identify capacities of roadways. And last, but certainly not least, is a shared vision amongst stakeholders in the public. Your input, as both Hannah and Kristen suggested, is absolutely vital to the success of our study. So a little bit of an overview on the study area itself. Simply put, it's a large study area. As the text suggests in the slide, it's about 287 square miles. And the study area is identified in that thick black bold line, which can generally be described as Southern Avenue, along the Southern Avenue alignment to the north, through portions of Apache Junction, city of Mesa, some adjacent county islands, and then Hawes Road alignment to the west, as it traverses through the city of Mesa and then through Queen Creek, as Brian's red cursor is, if you can follow that. And then down at the diagonal in the southwest corner through Santan Regional Park, and then down to Arizona Farms Road, adjacent and including a little bit of the Gila River Indian community. And as it continues over to the east, over to State Route 79, the ADOT facility, and including State Route 79, up to then Florence Junction at and then up US 60, and including US 60 up along the Grand Canyon, the Gold Canyon, I should say, community frontage, and then tying back into US 60. So what should also be noted is our MAG's member agencies that have jurisdiction in the study area. You can clearly see that Apache Junction, the city of Mesa, the town of Queen Creek are all identified in the study area. I'll direct your eyes to the lower portions of the map and the southern portion of the study area. The town of Florence, identified in the kind of the orange salmon color, is included, portions of it anyway, within our study area. And I should also point out that the large blue area that's identified on the map, primarily east of the CAP canal, is the Arizona State Land Department, which manages the majority of the lands east of the Central Arizona Project Canal, and a few lands to the west, but primarily to the east. So this study area is we've been talking as an internal team, is really kind of can be really described as two character areas, and you'll see that through the slides to come forward here, is that two character areas, meaning primarily to the east of the CAP canal are vacant lands that are managed by the State Land Department, as noted. And then to the east of the CAP, or excuse me, the west of the CAP, as you all know, is really areas of rapid growth and urbanization that are occurring primarily in Apache Junction, Mesa, Queen Creek, and unincorporated Santan Valley. But, just to highlight a couple, in Apache Junction, we have the newer D.R. Horton master plan community that's coming into town there. In the city of Mesa, there's an extraordinary development opportunities that are going on currently, but just touching on a snapshot of a couple would be some of the employment growth that's going on along Ellsworth Road and the Elliott Road corridors within our study area, those portions of Mesa. And of course, the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, a lot of activity in those areas. In Queen Creek, of course, Queen Creek, I think most of us know, is exploding with residential and commercial services growth and some employment growth, where there's a proposed LG battery manufacturing facility that's proposed at Ironwood and Germain, just to highlight a couple. Okay, so that's intended to get you acquainted at least with our large study area. Next slide, if you could, Brian. So that gets us to our first polling question that both Hannah and Kristen had touched on, that we're going to be incorporating into the body of the presentation. So we are definitely appreciative of all those that are in attendance tonight. This first question is really intended to help us get a sense of who is attending tonight, where, if they live within the study area, live outside the study area. So Kristen, if you could tee up the question, the poll. The question simply asks, which best describes yourself? Do you live within the study area? Do you live outside the study area? Or perhaps you own or manage or work for a business or organization within or near the study area? If you could kindly select the one that applies to you. Thank you.
All right, the poll is launched, and I'm just watching the responses come in. Give it a few seconds, and then we'll share the results. We have 76% sorry, participation. Just gonna wait a couple seconds and see if we get, oh, there's another one. 5 more. Anyone? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So 29% of you, or 6 of you, live within the study area. 7 or 33% live outside the study area. and 52% own, manage, or work for a business or organization within the study area. So I'll stop sharing those results and you guys can go ahead and continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Kristen. Let's change gears a little bit and get you familiar with the study process. So there's a lot of information on this slide, and we don't expect you to digest all of this. So let me just give you a summary description that I think will be meaningful for you. In terms of the timeline of the process, this study is approximately an 18-month study. Okay, we've been in the midst of the study. We're still in the early stages. But it's intended to conclude in and around the late summer of 2024. And over that study process timeline, as indicated on the graph, it's broken down into a series of 6 tasks. I wanted to first focus on and underscore task 2, not to jump ahead past task 1, but the continuum across the entire study area, the public and stakeholder engagement. It's a robust process of public and stakeholder engagement, and is really the foundation of this planning process, and a testament to the success of what this study will bring. It's going to occur throughout the study process. Okay, so not only do we have a series of 3 virtual community meetings, the first of which, of course, being tonight, we also have over 30 advisors or stakeholders that are participating as part of this process. So tonight's our first virtual community meeting in our first engagement with the public, but we also wanted to let you know we've already provided project briefings to the elected officials, and those would be the city councils of Apache Junction, Mesa, Queen Creek, Florence, and the Board of Supervisors with Pinal County. So they've been introduced to the project in the same fashion as this evening, and we've got to hear some of their inputs as well. We've also had the opportunity and pleasure to receive some input and feedback from a good number of those 30 stakeholders that I talked about before, and agency representatives, and just a snapshot of a few of those would include agencies like Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, EPCOR, who provides a lot of utilities to the area, as well as the Apache Junction, the water, and the Superstition Mountain CFD wastewater provider, Arizona Department of Transportation, State Land Department, etc. That's just a snapshot of the few. But like I said, we have 30 agency stakeholders at the table, so to speak, participated in this process. So real briefly on the tasks themselves, if I could direct your attention to task 3, which is kind of where we're at in the study process currently. That's the data collection and existing and forecasted conditions analysis. We've conducted a field review. We've been doing extensive data collection across a wide variety of continuums, and all that is kind of encapsulated into what's called a technical memorandum, or tech memo, which will be a paper, if you will, that will identify the existing and forecasted conditions for the study area. That'll be the culmination of task 3, of which we then evolve over to task 4, which will be the vision, goals, and the transportation system alternatives component of the process, where that'll be comprised of 2 technical memos where we identify the vision and goals for the project, and the evaluation methodology, describing how we're going to evaluate our approach to a series of alternatives for the transportation system network. So that will all culminate in what's known as tech memo number 3, where we will have those evaluation criteria and some alternative rankings for some transportation system alternatives. Okay, so at the conclusion of that task 4, we will then be coming back to conduct another virtual community meeting, much like this one this evening, to present to you those draft system alternatives, and preliminary rankings of those system alternatives. Well, with and through your inputs and input from the other stakeholders I mentioned, we will then transition to task 5 to, as the slide says, to develop basically a preferred set of recommendation and system alternatives, and an implementation and funding plan that will be captured in a series of 2 technical memos reports again, if you will. And then from there, we'll then present, we'll have another virtual open house meeting and presenting that final report and draft recommendations and revisiting with our elected officials to report out on the project recommendations. Next slide, if you could. So that brings us to our next live polling question, which really is intended to get at a sense of what is your most commonly used modes of transportation. I was referring to these system alternatives. Those are across each of the transportation types, whether those are roadways, bicycle, pedestrian, freight, rail, etc. So, but for you as individuals that either live, work, or play in the study area, as this question suggests, we want to get a sense of what modes of travel you utilize to and from within the study area on a frequent basis. So, Kristen, if you can go ahead and tee up the poll question, you can see that we want you to select any and all that apply there. Okay, whether it's your personal vehicle, bicycle, walking, you're taking public transit / bus. Is there paratransit services provided, or perhaps you're part of a carpool or a van pool in the area? So if you could take a moment and answer that, please, we'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin. And question 2 is launched. We do have our participation coming in. 15 of 25 right now participated. We'll give it a few more seconds. We still do have some responses coming in. Feel free to respond. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because our participation has dwindled. Share the results. And you can see personal vehicle is the most used mode, in addition to bicycling, walking, and paratransit. So thank you for those of you who participated.
So now we're going to transition the presentation to, as Hannah noted in her remarks, kind of an existing conditions of what we call the community profile. And you'll see of the study area, that is, and you'll see in the next series of slides, these characteristics are important because they really help to inform or begin to help inform and define what some of the transportation needs are or will be in the study area. So we can, and yeah, thank you. Let's begin with land ownership. The land ownership, and I touched on it a little bit earlier. The Arizona State Land Department, simply put, is the largest landowner in the study area. As you can, again, as denoted on the map in the baby blue color, the predominant chunk of the land, the majority of the lands that are east of the CAP Canal are managed by state land. There's other portions down in and around Santan Valley and adjacent to Mesa, to the east of Mesa. But you can see it's about 53% of the study area in terms of ownership. Private is the second largest in terms of land ownership. That's all denoted in the white areas on the map, which consists of a lot of unincorporated Santan Valley, Queen Creek, Mesa, and portions of Apache Junction. So that's about 44% of the study area. And then we have some fractional, the remainder of the ownership is the Bureau of Reclamation that owns and manages lands adjacent to the CAP, and a very small percentages by a few others. Again, as Hannah pointed out too, this information available for download, and there's some supplemental information regarding kind of the study background and land ownership information on the supplemental boards that are available on the website. Next slide, please. So let's talk about existing land use in the study area. We previously seen how the study area, as I noted, kind of has two distinct character areas. Well, this map really exemplifies that fact. As noted in the slide and the bullet points, it's predominantly vacant east of the CAP canal, and that vacant land is shown on the map in the white. So 61%, in fact, of our study area is comprised of vacant lands. The next highest or largest category of existing land uses is agriculture, which is shown in the dark green, which is predominantly in the Santan and southern Santan, northern Pinal County areas, in and adjacent to Hunt Highway predominantly. So you can see just between those two meeting attendees that it's a good portion of the study area is either vacant or currently agricultural land. So again, back to those two character areas, predominantly vacant to the east of the CAP canal and developed in agricultural lands, primarily within Mesa, Queen Creek, and unincorporated portions of Santan, as I said before. So comparing that to the next slide, which is showing us future land uses, which is an interesting slide. And you might ask, well, how do we identify what the future land use is for the study area? So this map and the future land use is really an expression of a blueprint for desired growth as defined by each community's individual general plan, or in the case of Pinal County, by its comprehensive plan. So as you can see on the slide, that the future land use in the area, in the study area, is predominantly single family residential and what's known as the mixed use land use category. You can also see that there's nodes of development and non-residential development of varied land uses located adjacent to the proposed north-south corridor and also along the Hunt Highway as well. So that's looking at the map itself. And now if I can direct your attention to the composition of in the pie chart, you'll see the breakdown. So about 31% of single family, medium density, 25% of the study area. Again, future land use identified for the mixed use category at about, like I said, 25%. You might be asking yourself, what does mixed use, what's that comprised of? Well, it's typically a compilation of varying residential densities, single family, detached, a little bit of attached, and of residential uses, with also some supporting non-residential uses in that mixed use area. So again, put a plug in for our supplemental materials on the project website. There's a crafty little presentation board that has a nice side-by-side of the existing land use comparing to the future land use that you might find informative to supplement this discussion this evening. So again, articulating those kind of the existing profile of the study area, let's talk about the current population in the study area. And by current, as you're familiar with population projections, current is defined as the year 2021. And in 2021, we have about 221,000 people living within about 75,000 households in the study area. That yields a population density of about 770 people per square mile in the study area, which is something that is less density than you find in the typical Phoenix metro area, by the way. Most of the populated areas are, of course, found within the urbanized portions of Mesa, Queen Creek, and Santan Valley. Population projected, looking ahead, is projected to increase by a whopping 63% by the year 2050. It kind of breaks out to an average growth of almost 20% across the decade. So I can direct your attention to the bar graph in the lower left. You'll see what I'm getting at with the projections. We're at about 221,000 currently. Projected, and again, 2050, the significance is, remember we talked about the horizon year of this study, which we'll analyze, and the population projection as it stands today is about 360,000 in population in the study area in 2050. So Just real quickly on the map, wanted to underscore the fact that this is not a population density map. This is actual quantities or sheer numbers of population. So each of those polygons that are, squares and rectangles, the darker the color, the more people that live there, okay? And the lighter the color, the less people that live there. So you can see a lot of population along Hunt Highway in Santan and the burgeoning areas of Queen Creek, and then of course in Mesa as well. So let's take a look at that's population. The next slide is the snapshot of what the employment currently is in the study area. And there might be more employment than you think out there. I know we have a lot of commuting in the area, but as the slide notes there's about 102,000 employed individuals within the study area. So, and that's approximately 94,000 employees commute either into or out of the study area for work. And we'll get that down in just a second here, but that's about 20 times the amount of people commute into or out of the study area as compared to those fortunate ones who are able to live and work within the study area. So those commuters generally, as the slide notes, travel to or from all parts of the valley. So another shameless plug for the materials on the website. There's a couple maps on there that articulate where those individuals are traveling to or from. But what I want to direct your attention to is the kind of the infographic before you. If you've seen something like this, I think it's extremely fascinating, particularly for this study area, that there are 14,800 individuals that actually travel from outside to into our study area for work, for their job, okay? Then on the right-hand side of the slide, there are about 79,000 individuals, workers that live in the study area, travel out of the study area to go to their employment locations, okay? So in the middle of the graphic is that I jokingly call the sweet spot, which is about 5,300 lucky individuals that get to work and live within the study area, okay? So if you look at just kind of transitioning over to the map, much like the population map that we talked about last slide, these are sheer numbers of employment numbers. And the darker the shade of purple, that means there's more employment. So the deepest or darkest of those purples represents 1,400 to 2,900 jobs located in those squares or polygon areas. So, and you can see a lot of those in and around Williams Gateway, Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport, by example. So understanding the study area employment really helps define the area's commute patterns and vehicular operations, particularly for this study, as we're looking at in the morning commute times and the late afternoon peak travel times. So in terms of existing employers in the study area, let's give you a little snapshot of that as well. There's about 1,300 employers that are comprised across 17 different employment sectors. Currently, like we said last slide, employing about 48,000 people in the study area. So of those 17 different employment sectors, the top 5 sectors in our study area are comprised of consumer services, retail, education, healthcare, construction, and business services. And the jobs in the study area are also projected to increase by about 102% by the year 2050. So if you're thinking about those percentages and you're comparing that to population, it's great to see that the employment projections are even higher than the population projections, right? Help that jobs to housing balance. But looking at the job projection graph, you'll see, as I mentioned, 48,000 plus or minus jobs currently, projected in the year 2050 to increase to about 97,000 jobs in the area. So if you look at kind of transition over to the map itself, all those dots are definitely representing something. Each of those dots are representing individual employers in the study area. So the red dots, which are the most numerous, small businesses, which are the driving force of our economy a lot of times, anywhere from 5 to 50 employees for each of those red dots that you see. Yellow dots are employers that are employing 50 to 100 employees. Green dot employing 100 to 250 employees, and the largest blue dots, those employers employing 250 to 600 employees. So as you're trying to eyeball the map there, I think it's worth noting that some of the most notable largest employers in the study area include the CMC Steel at Signal Butte in Germain, the Banner Ironwood Medical Center at Gansel in Combs, the Fujifilm Materials site at State Route 24 in Meridian, the Walmart Supercenter at US 60 and Signal Butte, and the Apple Data Center at Signal Butte and Elliott. Not to be outdone by, as many of us know, some incoming employers that are worth, I think, noting in no particular order are the Facebook Data Center that's at the corner of Ellsworth and Elliott, and as I mentioned before, the LG battery manufacturing facility at Ironwood and Germain. So that's a snapshot of the profile of the study area. That brings us to our next live polling question. And so now that we've briefly reviewed the area, kind of the commute patterns, the population and employment, seemed like an appropriate time and an opportunity to ask you all about your biggest concerns with the existing transportation network. So as Kristen launches the poll here, you'll see that we want to get a sense, and we want you to select any and all that apply. What are the biggest concerns or needs within the existing transportation network in the study area? Is it not enough roads? Are they either unpaved or non-existent or discontinuous? Is it traffic congestion? Is it unsafe? Is it a safety issue? Is there unsafe road conditions or, conflicts with trucks? Lack of access to highways to get out of the area? Is it a road maintenance issue, whether it's insufficient or delayed? Is it sometimes running into drainage or flooding of roadways? Is it an issue of lacking or inadequate public transit service in the area? How about on the sidewalk side of things? Is non-existent or discontinuous sidewalks or bike lanes for that type of mobility? Or is it an issue in your mind of inadequate traffic control, meaning signals or stop signs at the various intersections in the study area? Or if it's something else, if you could specify that as well, we'd appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I wanted to interject here, Kevin. If there's anything that you don't see here in terms of an answer and you'd like to give additional input, please feel free to enter that in the Q&A dialog box, and we will capture that input, and we appreciate any input that you have. I'm watching responses come in. And it seems like everybody who's going to, nope, there's another one. I'm trying not to have too much dead time, but I want to make sure everybody has a chance to respond. It does seem like the responses are dwindling, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And you can see those on your screen. And again, if you have any other input, please enter it in the Q&A function, and we will absolutely have that input as part of the report from this meeting. And we appreciate any input you can provide. So I'm going to stop sharing so you can move on.
Thanks, Kristen. So now we're gonna, after we provided that kind of community profile summary, we're gonna now transition to the existing conditions of the transportation system in the study area. So, and we'll begin with the roadway functional classifications and some of the characteristics of the roads in the area. And so if you're unfamiliar with what a roadway functional classification is, that term, it basically defines the role of the road in the overall roadway network, right? And the roads provide for two distinct functions, as the slide suggests. Those are mobility and or movement and access, where mobility, simply put, is the ability to move traffic along within the roadway. Access is the ease of entering or exiting a roadway to and from the land uses that are adjacent to that roadway. So, and as the chart kind of suggests, I'm sure this might be some common knowledge, but to you, but as you look, it's interesting to look at as you see it in a chart like that, that if you're unfamiliar with the concept, that the larger the roadway is, like say an interstate or a freeway or a main arterial roadway, that road, of course, can move more traffic. But as it moves more traffic, it typically has more limited access to that roadway, right? So, and conversely, as the chart denotes there, smaller roadways, certainly like local streets, minor and major collectors, they move less traffic that's their design. They're not intended to move large volumes of traffic, but they have greater ease of access to and from the land uses adjacent to them. So let's take a look at the map itself. You will see that in the study area, there's 4 functionally classified roadways, and they're articulated into different colors. So the collector roadways, which typically, as the name implies, collect traffic from the local roadways and distribute them to the arterials. Those are identified in the purple roadways, the purple lines that Brian's identifying or showing on his little red icon there. Then there's the arterial roadways, which are typically along the 1 mile grid that we all are familiar with in the Phoenix area typically. Those are identified in yellow along that grid within the study area. Then there's the expressway functional classification, which has just one application in our study area. It's that segment of State Route 24 from the Ellsworth point over to Ironwood. And then, of course, there's the freeway facilities, which includes the first leg of State Route 24 as it connects to the Loop 202, and then, of course, US 60. So a couple of the stats there that show there's 100, kind of some factoids for you. There's 159 lane miles of highways within our study area, 633 lane miles of arterial roadways, and 120 lane miles of collector roadways. And if you're asking yourself, what the heck is a lane mile? That's simply put, the length of that roadway or the center line of the roadway multiplied by the number of lanes on that roadway. Okay. So transitioning over to existing volumes, traffic volumes, as residents and employees in the study area, you already know where a lot of the traffic is occurring. You can tell us better, and we look forward to hearing from you on that. But let me first direct your attention to the map, okay? Again, the color of the lines this time, it's the same roadway network, of course, but these lines indicate different information on this map. So in terms of expressing the traffic volumes, I wanted to emphasize the fact that these are directional flows. Okay, so you can see the arrows. It's the traffic volume or number of cars per day on average that are moving in a certain direction, let's say on Ellsworth or Ironwood Road, either north or south, okay? And so those yellow lines, as the legend denotes on the map, the yellow lines represent anything less than 10,000 vehicles a day, again, in each direction. So I'm not going to summarize all of them, but just a snapshot of a few, Germain, Riggs, some of the segments of Queen Creek Road are captured in some of those yellow lines of less than 10,000 vehicles. Again, each direction per day. Moving up the ladder, if you will, in the legend, that orange line represents those roadways that have between 10,000 and 20,000 vehicles in either direction on a daily occurrence. There's many of those, as you can see on the map. So Hunt Highway, most of us know has a tremendous amount of vehicles, again, each direction. State Route 24 from Ellsworth to Ironwood Road, Ocotillo Road from Ellsworth to Ironwood, and there's several others, okay? Signal Butte south of US 60. So these are captured in those areas there. The next gradation up, which I'll call kind of the burnt orange line, represents those areas from 20,000 to 45,000 vehicles, again, in either direction. So we're moving up again, of course, to larger roadways. Those are going to include State Route 24 from Loop 202 to Ellsworth Road, and many portions of US 60, excuse me. Last but not least are the highest traffic volume roads as represented in the thick red line. And those are daily traffic volumes from 45,000 to 97,000 vehicles, again, in each direction. Those are, of course, our biggest roadways, the freeways. So Loop 202, north of State Route 24, by example, and some portions of US 60, again, along that, the Superstition Freeway corridor. So all that on the map, if you kind of transition over to sorry, Brian, back one more, you can see the 9 arterial roadways with the total highest traffic volumes. And you've probably been reading them while I'm talking, but some of them should not come as a surprise to you. Signal Butte, Ellsworth, Hunt, Elliott. We know Ironwood Road has a lot of traffic. So those are the highest, the 9 roadways with the highest traffic volumes in the study area. Sorry, Brian, a little long-winded. Transitioning to the next slide. That brings us to live poll question number 4. So now that we've reviewed a variety of population, employment, commute patterns, traffic data, it seems appropriate to ask, what are your top priorities for the future of the transportation network in the study area? And what would you like to see added or changed? So you can see that this question is an open-ended question. It doesn't, we want to give you the opportunity to express your thoughts and feelings and not compartmentalize you to a series of, scripted responses. So Kristen, I'll turn it over to you to facilitate the live poll. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. I have launched this question and I just want to make it clear to everyone, if you have input on any question or on anything, please do put it in the Q&A function. We will answer questions asked at the end of the presentation, I assure you, and any input that you provide, any comments or ideas, we absolutely are receiving those, and those will be part of this meeting recording. So we really appreciate those. I am monitoring all of the questions and the comments, and we will answer the questions that are asked in the Q&A function at the end of the presentation. Again, any comments that we receive, we will incorporate those into the study. Excuse me. And I am just monitoring the responses coming in. Excuse me. And any input that you have is not limited to this question. You can type anything you'd like into the Q&A function at any time. I do still have responses coming in, so I don't want to end the poll too soon. We do want to keep the meeting moving, but please take your time to answer. All of your responses will be recorded as part of this meeting recording and will be incorporated into the study. And I know people need a little bit of time to type. I'm not going to read all of the responses in the interest of time, but please know that we are receiving your responses. So we have 15 responses so far. Oh, 16, 17. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. And thank you all for your responses. All right.
Okay, moving along to live poll question number 5. So with the traffic volume information and that map that we just reviewed kind of fresh in your heads, we wanted to go ahead and ask the question to see if your responses will help reinforce some of the information we've been seeing. So the question now is, which of the following roadways within the study area do you or members of your household experience daily traffic congestion or safety related issues? And we'd like you to select any and all that apply. So is it Arizona State Route 24, US Route 60, which is the Superstition, Ironwood Road and Gansel Road, Hunt Highway, Combs, Rittenhouse, Ellsworth, Ocotillo, Queen Creek, or Meridian Road?
And thanks to everybody for participating. Got the answers coming in. Got 9 answers so far, 12, 14, 15. Thank you. Each time the number goes up, I give it about 5 more seconds. And again, if you have any other input, please enter it in the Q&A function. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and share the results. And you can see our highest numbers are on Ellsworth and US 60. So we'll move along. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kristen. And speaking of moving along, I'm going to make sure we have plenty of time for live Q&A. So I'm going to keep this moving along and give a synopsis of the crash data for the study area. And that's historical data over the past 5 years. As you can see on the map on the right-hand side, those crash hotspots, as they're typically called, are indicated in that spectrum of colors on the map, whereby the blue areas represents the most sparse crash locations, if you will, and those areas in the brightest of yellow represents the most common or frequent, areas or the highest propensity for crashes. Just real briefly, in no particular order, you can see clearly on the map, Ellsworth and Ocotillo intersection, and Ellsworth up to Queen Creek has a propensity for crashes. Ellsworth and Ray, 2 locations along the US 60, which is typical for a high volume, freeway facility. The Ironwood and Ocotillo intersection, and Hunt Highway and Bella Vista Road, just to name a few. So just real briefly, you can see on average, there's about 2,500 crashes a year over the past 5 years for a total of just under 13,000 crashes. 358 of those crashes resulting in a fatality or a serious injury. 151 of those crashes are what they call non-motorist or involve a bicyclist or pedestrian, and with unfortunately 10 fatalities. You can see year by year the breakdown is maintains a relatively consistent average, and then the lower left-hand corner is a brief breakdown of crashes by injury severity, with the majority at 9,200 having no injury, and 64 unfortunately being of the fatal variety. So next slide, please. Let's talk briefly about active transportation and transit service in the study area. Again, we talked about how this study represents all modes of transportation. So certainly last but not least is active transportation and transit. Starting with transit, as you can see on the map, Valley Metro offers bus service routes along the east-west corridors, along Southern, Baseline, Guadalupe, and Williamsfield Road. That line terminates its easternmost termination at the Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport on the Sossaman alignment. Valley Metro also has an express route on US 60, of which its eastern limits or terminus is at Power Road. I should say that CART, or the Central Arizona Regional Transit, provides service to the Coolidge, Florence area. I mentioned that because Florence is in our study area, but they do not offer any transit service in the study area. And as the map also notes, there's the ASU Polytechnic campus to the Tempe campus express route service as well. I want to just, relative to transit, note that the project is going to explore multiple transit mobility options, whether those are human service transit options like paratransit or non-emergency medical transportation. Also going to explore microtransit and micromobility options. We can talk about more of that if there's questions on that in the Q&A. Real quickly, active transportation, as the map on the left shows, existing facilities, which this map is showing, whether those are bike lanes, bike routes, mixed-use paths, paved shoulders. They're predominantly, the existing ones are primarily, as you can imagine, in the urbanized portions of Mesa, Queen Creek, and Santan Valley. In summary, we have 106 miles of bike lanes, 92 miles of mixed-use paths, 36 miles of paved shoulders, and at this point, we have limited sidewalk data. At this point, we're still working on obtaining some of that. Like I said, we're in that portion of the process of the study. So that's a quick snapshot on active transportation and transit service. That brings us to our sixth polling question, which naturally has to do both with bike and ped, the first one, and then we'll have another one on transit. So we wanted to take the opportunity to ask you, what prevents you from walking and or biking to or from within the study area? And again, select any and all that apply. Is it a lack of sidewalks or discontinuous sidewalks? Or do those sidewalks have some physical barriers such as canals and railroads? Is there a lack of dedicated or discontinuous bike lanes and or bike paths, or too many physical barriers like canals and roadways? Is it a safety issue? High traffic volumes on the road, the speed of cars on the road, not enough crossings or lighting? Do sidewalks, bike lane, or bike paths are in poor condition or not wide enough? Is it an issue of not enough shade for those hot months of the year? Or is it not enough time, or destinations are too far? Or perhaps you have a disability, or there's a lack of ADA facilities? Or does this not apply because you don't own a bike and you tend to drive?
Thanks, Kevin. And we do have the poll live. We have 14 responses so far. Just a note that if you have any other input, please do enter it in that Q&A function. We're not going to go through and read all the comments that are in the Q&A function, but we will answer any questions that are asked as soon as the presentation is complete. So thank you all for participating. We really appreciate your input. It will be incorporated into the study. And we have 16 responses. I'm gonna wait about 5 seconds and
I'm seeing some notes that people are anxious to move along. And good news, there's only one more question, and then we're at the live Q&A. So we're about there, folks.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. Share the results. And we can see the results here. The biggest response is not safe enough for bike and ped activity.
Interesting.
So thank you.
So our last polling question, and again, we appreciate your participation and patience in these questions. This has to do with transit. If transit services were provided in the study area, which type of service would you tend to use? And again, select any that apply. Would it be fixed route bus service, dial-a-ride, paratransit, like a Medicab or logistic care for Medicaid transportation, microtransit or on-demand services, a taxi or ride share, or intercity or commute rail? Again, if those were provided. Thank you for taking the time to respond.
And question 7 is live here. We're just receiving our responses. Taxi and rideshare. Oh, well, I'm just watching the percentages here, so I shouldn't speak too soon. So far, our highest number of responses are in taxi / ride share or intercity or commuter rail. Give it just a few more seconds. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll and share the results. And like I said, our highest number of responses is in the taxi and rideshare or intercity or commuter rail categories. So thanks again, everybody, for participating. Please feel free to enter any other comments or questions in the Q&A. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with the Q&A. There are a number of comments that do not pose a question, so we'll just incorporate those into the study and really appreciate those, but we do want to answer your questions. So I'm going to start at the top. First question, Cortez and Baseline was a quiet little T intersection. Now a 2-lane road joins it from the south. This little 2-lane road promises to become a traffic nightmare, bad for the residential communities accessed through this intersection. How and when will this be remedied? This is Cortez and Baseline.
Thank you, Michael, for that question. So this is the kind of input that we're looking for, is to hear from you what areas of concern you have within the study area. So we'll certainly note this intersection that you're referencing. And in terms of how and when, this will be up to the jurisdictions. We're building the framework for the near-term and long-term transportation network. And certainly this is the kind of feedback that we need to help build out that vision for the future network.
All right. Thanks, Hannah. Next question is, do you have the strategic development plan from the appropriate owners, such as business development, housing development entities? I think
thank you. Thank you, Jamie. We are working with our member jurisdictions, member agencies to incorporate that kind of data and information into our study and into our modeling efforts. So we really rely on the land use plans and that have been provided to MAG, and we are developing socioeconomic data projections as well. So we definitely do have and will incorporate all of those plans from our partner agencies within this framework. Thank you.
Yes, and several comments that back up that question. Let's see. I'm looking for questions. Next question I can answer. How many attendees participated, not registered, but attended this Zoom meeting? So we had, it was kind of fluctuating between about 24 and 30. We did have 60 registered. I think our highest number was at about 31. So thank you for answering that question. This is a question. I would like to question the number of one-way traffic on Ironwood Road at 21K, because 15 years ago it was at 25K one way. So I think those numbers might need to be reassessed.
Okay, thank you, Bridget, for that feedback. We'll certainly double check. I'm going to let Kevin just speak to that as the maps have been prepared and really are pulling from the most recent data. So is there anything else you would like to add, Kevin?
Yeah, no, that's great, Hannah. Just real briefly, just to reinforce what Hannah's response is. And yes, in the upcoming months, we're getting ready to embark on that travel demand model stage of the process. So those are those model inputs with numbers such as like that for Ironwood Road and other roads. We're going to be taking a close look at that in collaboration with MAG. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll make sure we have that one identified moving forward.
All right, thanks, Hannah and Kevin. The next question is, what are we doing about implementing EV infrastructure?
Jamie, thank you for your question. So we would love to hear your thoughts on that. I can also note that MAG is conducting a regional electrification readiness study that, just make a plug for that. I think we're at the beginning of really trying to understand, how this infrastructure is implemented overall within a region, but it's certainly something that we appreciate your feedback on and we'll think about as we're conducting this study, especially in consideration of other study efforts that are happening that are specifically looking at EV infrastructure.
Thanks, Hannah. And I want to just note that we really appreciate all of the input that you guys are giving us here. So thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out with us, hanging in there with us. Our next question is, how is the potential LG plant location on Ironwood impacting this study?
Yes, Bridget, thank you for that question. We are most certainly aware of this development and the coming development. And we are incorporating that within the data and within the modeling. So, the timing's been great to learn about these plans, and especially the timing of the study, so that will certainly be incorporated within the modeling effort for our study for the future transportation network.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Next question is, we access our current residents via US 60 and Mountain View Road. How will this route be affected?
So again, I think what we're looking for here is for you to tell us what your issues and concerns are so that you can really highlight for us in as we move forward in the study. So that is something that's an area and an intersection that we'll certainly take a close look at throughout this study. So we really appreciate your feedback and letting us know that that's an area of concern.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Next question is, how much is this study costing and who is paying for it?
So the study, you can get in touch with me as the project manager. You can email me. My email address is hquinsey@azmag.gov. Hannah Quincy at arizonamag.gov. And we could talk more about that information.
Okay, great. And I believe your email address is on the last slide here.
Correct.
I'll also point out for everyone, it's right at the bottom of the slide that's on the screen, www.azmag.gov/SVMTPS. If you can visit that website, there's a way to contact us through that website, and there's more information in addition to the presentation that we've given tonight. Let's see. We already answered the question about the LG plant. What about carpool lane preference for EV? That seems to be the standard these days. Are carpool lanes incorporated here?
So I would say that, you know, we follow all the network that will be developed will follow all the standards that have been developed by, say, MAG and by ADOT. So those are, you know, typical standards, especially as it relates to the HOV lanes and whatnot. So I think I just want to remind you that this study, we're really looking to kind of define what is that future grid network for this, you know, part of our subregion that for some of it is very undeveloped and there is no grid network. And for other parts, it's rapidly developing with lots of congestion. So we're really looking to kind of piece this whole study network to this whole study area together with a complete network, you know, of arterials, collectors, and all the different functional classifications. But that's a main sort of focus, I would say, of our study effort.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Next question. It appears the north-south will be one of the key new corridors within the planning area. Unfortunately, that roadway lacks a funding source currently. Will the study address opportunities to address this funding shortfall?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We, as part of the study, we are scoped to do a funding and implementation plan. So we will be looking at all available and potential funding sources, as well as potential partnership opportunities, and provide that information for, you know, our member cities, our member jurisdictions and agencies, so that they have the best ideas of implementation for the recommendations going forward.
All right, thanks, Hannah. Right now we have one more question. It's why would you not give cost and financing information?
Oh, we can provide that information. I don't have that right in front of me right now.
So maybe Brian, you could move to the next slide. I think it lists Hannah's email address. I guess the one after that. Oh, we have next steps. So, Jim, if you can hold for just a second, we'll make sure that that email address is up on the screen. But again, if you go to the website, there is an opportunity to contact us. And again, Hannah just doesn't have that information at her fingertips and is happy to provide that. Kevin, did you want to go through next steps?
Yeah, thanks, Kristen. Just real briefly, I know we touched on a little bit of the study process, but just to reinforce those, this project has extensive data collection process, so we're continuing that process, and that includes tonight, you know, collecting the input and feedback from you all, which is vitally important. So as we wrap up that data collection process, we will move forward with the preparation of the existing and forecasted conditions report, noted as Tech Memo number 1. Followed by Tech Memo number 2, as I mentioned before, vision goals and the evaluation methodology. We're going to have what's called a growth scenario analysis, where we look at the study area and identify some areas that may be targeted for more growth than others, and run some travel demand models based on those growth scenarios to develop some system alternatives, and that's a transportation network system series of alternatives. And then that will culminate with the technical memorandum number 3 that will run all those system transportation alternatives through an evaluation matrix and come out with a series of priorities or rankings, of which then we will come back and visit with you all at another virtual community meeting at the culmination of those next steps. That's it for me on next steps. Thanks, Kristen.
Sure. So go ahead, Hannah, sorry.
Well, I just wanted to thank everyone tonight. You've spent quite a bit of time with us and we really appreciate it. We appreciate all the thoughts, you know, just identifying, you know, how you use the transportation system within the study area and what your needs and concerns are and what you'd like to see us consider for the future of the transportation network. We just really appreciate you being here tonight and providing your input, asking those questions, and certainly feel free to reach out to us at any point throughout the study. You know, my email address is up there on the screen. Please feel free to reach out if you have any additional information, questions. We also have that survey on our project website. Please feel free to share that with your friends, coworkers, anyone you're using the transportation system within the study area. We want to get that survey out, but be live for the next couple weeks. So, please encourage others to give us input on this study. We love hearing from you, and we appreciate all of your time tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, so a couple more questions came in. This is a good one. What was Brian's Snyder's role? He was silent. Yes, Brian's been running the presentation, and he is a key technical member on the team. He was running the presentation. So, so shout out to Brian there. Give us a wave. And then one more question real quick. The left turn onto Mountain View off eastbound US 60 can be problematic. So turning left onto Mountain View off of eastbound US 60. So can entering eastbound US 60 and bearing left to turn left onto Mountain View. This transition can be treacherous. The study border goes north to the intersection of Mountain View and Superstition Boulevard, parenthetical University. This is our route to the post office. Will this be included in the study?
Yeah, for sure. We will absolutely look at this and note your safety issue here. So thank you for providing that and bringing that to our attention.
All right. Okay, so thanks for those last minute questions. We appreciate all your input. Again, we're going to leave this slide up on the screen for a few minutes so that you have this information. But again, the website, you can definitely contact us through that. And by registering for this meeting, we have your email address. So we will certainly let you know when the next community meeting virtual community meeting is occurring, and look forward to seeing you again then.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Have a great night, everybody. Safe travels as always. And we really appreciate you spending the time with us this evening.